Good evening. It's Tuesday, January 7th. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We begin with breaking news and reports of rockets hitting two Iraqi air bases that house U.S. troops. The Pentagon issued a statement moments ago saying Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard is responsible for launching more than a dozen ballistic missiles at two Iraq air bases. One of them, the Ain al-Assad air base, which houses U.S. troops, but no word of any American casualties at this time. The attacks are being labeled as a revenge operation over the killing of Revolutionary Guard General Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in a U.S. drone strike Friday near Baghdad's airport. We're told the president is meeting right now with his top national security team and that he may address the nation at some time tonight. We will continue to monitor the situation and bring you an update later in this newscast. And as we've been reporting, local military bases already on heightened alert. In fact, a suspicious device scare during a vehicle inspection at Naval Air Station North Island forced the closure of the base's main gate this morning. The closure created major delays along the Coronado Bridge and into the base. It turned out the device was not dangerous. Officials at MCAS Miramar and Camp Pendleton say they expect delays in and around base entrances there as well due to increased security. And more breaking news tonight as local Congressman Duncan Hunter formally gives his notice. The disgraced East County Republican will step down in the days ahead. It's the latest fallout from his corruption case. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar is live in our newsroom with what we're hearing from Hunter. Priya.
That's right, Maya. Congressman Duncan Hunter said that he will be officially resigning his office effective January 13th. Last month, Hunter pleaded guilty to a federal charge of conspiracy for misusing campaign funds for personal use. He's represented the 50th Congressional District for 11 years. He faces a possible 5-year sentence and a $250,000 fine. His sentencing hearing is March 17th. This afternoon, Hunter sent a letter addressed to Governor Newsom. Part of it reads, quote, perhaps the contribution I am most proud of is giving a voice to our men and women in uniform. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee, I brought attention to inefficient military programs and worked to make sure our warfighters had the resources they needed to carry out their mission. It'll be up to Governor Newsom as to whether a special election will be held for Hunter's seat. If not, the 50th District would have no member of Congress until January of 2021. Republicans Carl DeMaio, Darrell Issa, and Brian Jones and Democrat Amar Campanajjar are all running for the seat in the general election, and that primary is scheduled for March 3rd. Maya?
And Priya, you've done some recent interviews with the candidates. Can you tell us what they've been saying about the situation?
The candidates have been frustrated, as you might expect, because up until a few weeks ago, if Hunter had resigned, a special election would have had to be called. But now, because of the delay, it's left up to Governor Newsom. It also seems like it's going to be too late to consolidate that special election with the general election. And that means that if there is a special election, it will take place after March 3rd. Typically, special elections have lower turnouts, which favor Republicans. So some political analysts believe that Governor Newsom could decide not to hold one if he feels pressure from House Republicans in Washington. And we're certainly going to be keeping an eye on this in the coming days to see what happens next. Reporting live, Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
Thanks for keeping us updated, Priya. And now to a big issue that will be on the minds of voters: housing and affordability. People who live near a local park are complaining about a growing tent city encampment. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler went there to see what's being done.
This is the area that's familiar to me. A lot of people did come here because of the restroom, but they close it at nighttime, and so there's nowhere to go.
50-year-old Lillian Greer, who also goes by the name Renee, has been homeless for about 5 years. She says she became homeless when the woman she was a caretaker for in Spring Valley died. Since then, she's been living on and off in Spring Valley's Lamar County Park. Recently, she's only seen the situation grow worse.
Every day there's a new tent that comes. Every day, new tent, new people, new people. Sometimes it's families, sometimes it's just single people, but it's just out of control.
She didn't want her face on camera. She says she has asked the county for help in finding a place to stay, but hasn't been offered assistance.
No, never offered a shelter bed, but I've been ticketed over and over again for being here illegally camping.
Local organizations and the county have frequented the park to offer assistance to homeless people, especially over the past few months. Kanisha Ray was at the park Tuesday morning with her 3 young children. She's been living in a house across from the park for the past 6 months. She says that the homeless encampment doesn't bother her.
The kids love it. They have a lot of exercise equipment here. They love to see the squirrels running around. Lots of different toys.
Ray has been homeless herself. She went back to school and was able to get a job to get herself back in a home, but says that from her own experience, it's difficult for many homeless people to navigate the assistance that the county is offering.
I mean, none of these people have children or are at the age limit, so you don't qualify for any type of benefits or housing. Or these people might have, I don't know, substance abuse problems and they choose to be out here, I guess.
Advocates admit that people simply choosing to live on the streets is an issue, but not the overwhelming reason why people end up homeless in San Diego. Terry Pumphrey is a Spring Valley resident and a member of the Spring Valley Community Church, which offers food to the homeless once or twice a week and runs a food pantry once a month. She said the biggest difference the county can make is by creating more housing options in the communities where people are becoming homeless.
Homeless encampment is absolutely not the ideal situation. However, we have to look at housing these people where they are from, in situations that they can maintain themselves. And that's not always as easy as it sounds.
Every few weeks, sheriff's deputies clear out the encampment. Another sweep is planned for next week. But until the underlying issues of homelessness are tackled, both the homeless and advocates alike don't see a solution in Spring Valley anytime soon. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
Hope lives here. Those are the words revealed today across a banner at a new affordable housing project by Father Joe's Villages. The first project of the new year features this motel soon to be converted into 82 housing units for people experiencing homelessness. It's part of Father Joe's Turning the Key initiative, creating permanent housing and full services for its residents. Father Joe's Villages resident Laura Morgan spoke at today's event and says this was a full circle moment for her because the last time she was at this motel, she was homeless.
There's a lot of people out there, really, really good people that have had really bad lives. Things have happened. They lost their job. Their daughter got pregnant. They lost their Section 8. They lived in their car in Balboa Park. I did. Getting away from domestic violence. There's just so many different reasons. So when you see someone laying on the concrete, don't assume you know why they're homeless. Don't assume it, because you might be wrong.
And Laura is now part of the permanent supportive housing program at Father Joe's Villages, which is San Diego's largest homeless services provider. The organization also provides health care, substance abuse treatment, job training, and child care for its residents. One of the most controversial housing bills in the California legislature is back. Senate Bill 50 would require cities to allow higher density housing and taller buildings near public transit stops and in areas close to job centers. The bill was reintroduced last night with a change that allows cities to come up with an alternative within 2 years. SB 50 has to pass the Senate by the end of the month to stay alive. A new explanation is now being given over what caused an entire local community to be without water for a week. Officials in Poway now say the cause of the contamination there was due to a rope. KPBS's Matt Hoffman explains.
Poway water officials say a rope just like this got stuck in a flap, and instead of closing tight, the gate was left open about an inch, which allowed stormwater to flow into already treated water. Officials don't know how the rope got there.
It looks like somebody just left a rope that shouldn't have been there, and there was some negligence on the part of the city.
Mike Pasolka is the owner of Players Sports Bar in Poway.
Is everything else out, guys? Yeah. All right, thank you.
After stormwater contaminated the system last month, the entire town was without water. Pasolka and nearly 200 other Poway businesses had to shut their doors for a week, resulting in big losses.
I would say 18 to 22,000. As you may have heard, we did pay our employees while we were closed.
We're also learning that at least 4 people now have filed complaints against the city of Poway asking for damages. An attorney I talked to earlier today says more of those complaints are on their way. One business owner is asking for $12,000 in damages, another $10,000, one $5,400, and one resident $270.
I do plan on filing a claim.
Pasolka says his insurance isn't giving giving him any compensation for lost income.
I do have some loss of business interruption insurance, and I filed a claim with them. They've denied it as something that's not covered under that policy.
That's because his policy didn't have a boil water clause. Other businesses we talked to are in the same boat.
I think they're frustrated still.
To try and help restaurants, the Poway Chamber kicked off an Eat Big, Tip Big campaign.
It's been going good. We've been getting a lot of good response from the restaurants. They're happy that we did something.
I've heard some people doing as much as 50% better in sales because of this event and people coming to support them. We haven't seen that kind of uptick.
Businesses and restaurants in Poway have about 5 months to file claims with the city. Only after filing they can explore their legal options. The city says it will work as quickly as possible to review the claims, but Pasolka over at Players isn't too optimistic.
I would anticipate that they're going to not pay the claims and deny them because, if they go ahead and agree to, they've got to pay every restaurant's claim. So, which would be the right thing to do, though, I think.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The Border Patrol is sharing pictures of a rescue that played out over the weekend high atop a section of newly installed border fence. San Diego firefighters were called in to use their ladder. The Border Patrol says 3 people were stuck 30 feet high while trying to climb over. Foggy weather made the fence wet and slippery, making the situation even more dangerous. All 3 were taken to a Border Patrol station for processing. Cross-border business will be affected by the new U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Congress was hoping to finish approval early in the new year, but impeachment could slow it down. Here's Republican Senator Chuck Grassley speaking to the reporter on the uncertainty.
You expect that this is going to be delayed for a little bit, that there won't be a full floor vote this week on USMCA because this has to go through all of the relevant committees. Is that correct?
That's something I wasn't aware of until yesterday, and I think that's going to be a problem. But the real problem is the extent to which we don't know when we're going to get the articles of impeachment, because when those articles of impeachment enter into the Senate chamber, that has priority over everything else. If I wanted to speculate, they don't come over for another week or 10 days, then we got time to get this done. If the articles of impeachment come over, it could be 2, 3, 4 weeks before we get to it.
And as for the impeachment process, the issue remains at a standstill. But Republicans seem unified in making sure they're control of the process in the Senate. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he has the votes to set ground rules. Democrats want an upfront agreement to allow witnesses at a Senate trial, but McConnell says a decision allowing witnesses will come later. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has yet to formally move articles of impeachment to the Senate because of this disagreement. A Lemon Grove man is recovering tonight after being shot by 3 San Diego County deputies. Authorities say the suspect was shot after he pulled a handgun from his jacket as deputies approached him. The ordeal began after reports of a disturbance involving a suicidal man at a home in a neighborhood north of Hamishaw Road. The man underwent surgery for multiple gunshot wounds that are not believed to be life-threatening. He's expected to be booked for assault with a deadly weapon and being a felon in possession of a firearm. Across California, law enforcement have a new standard when it comes to using deadly force. The law was written by San Diego Assemblywoman Shirley Weber. More now from Cal Matters reporter Laurel Rosenhall.
Officers can now only use deadly force when necessary in defense of human life. The law says officers are supposed to shoot only if there's an imminent threat of death or serious injury. It also says that in determining if a shooting is justified, authorities must look at the behavior leading up to the shooting of both the subject and the officer. That's supposed to encourage police to de-escalate situations whenever possible.
We want to thank all of our sponsors.
The new law is a win for civil rights advocates who've wanted to restrict police use of deadly force for a long time. But to get the bill through the legislature, they had to compromise with police. In the compromise, lawmakers took out a definition of the word necessary. This means the power of the new law is largely going to be determined by the courts. In future cases, it'll be up to them to decide what necessary means. After the compromise, police dropped their opposition to the bill, and a few civil rights groups, including Black Lives Matter, pulled their support. The law goes into effect on New Year's Day 2020.
Cal Matters has more on the new laws for California in 2020. You can find their stories at calmatters.org.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, Trump's strategy for countering Iran as the two nations exchange threats. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Puerto Rico is dealing with another major disaster tonight. Early this morning, the southern part of the island was shaken by a magnitude 6.4 earthquake. Daryl Ford just shows us the damage.
The damage, catastrophic. Puerto Ricans on high alert after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake caused chaos throughout the island. The quake struck just off the island's southern coast at 4:24 a.m. local time on Tuesday morning. This could be the most damaging earthquake to hit the island in over a century. Puerto Rico has been hit with dozens of earthquakes with a magnitude 4.0 or higher in the past month, causing widespread power outages and damaging roads, homes, and other buildings. Parts of the Immaculata Concepcion, a colonial church built in 1841, collapsed Tuesday. Biologist and commercial drone pilot Omar Lopez shot these images of the earthquake aftermath in Guanica. One of Puerto Rico's most famous landmarks, Punta Ventana, collapsed Monday. The picturesque rock formation is no more. Puerto Rico Governor Wanda Vázquez-Garced, who took over last year after widespread protests, declared a state of emergency.
We're talking about a situation Puerto Rico had never been exposed to in 102 years.
President Trump has been briefed on the earthquakes, and FEMA officials have been in touch with the island's governor. Daryl Forges, KPBS News.
We're tracking a chance of rain for some parts of San Diego County. Regina Miller has our forecast.
Well, a quick look at our headlines here. It's going to be cooler tomorrow afternoon. Temperatures are going to start to drop later in the day. Some showers could be around the area, not everywhere, but Thursday afternoon, Thursday night, we could see a couple of showers in spots. Winds increase here for the late week. So looking across the area right now, things are pretty quiet. We have abundant sunshine through the late day, but then for the evening, a mainly clear sky in the forecast. The temperature drops to 48 degrees. We have a mainly clear sky tonight in Oceanside at 40. We drop to 36 in Mount Laguna and 43 in Borrego Springs. A cooling trend for your Wednesday, and our temperatures by the afternoon, by late in the day, we could see those temperatures dropping from a high of 65 in San Diego for the midday. By around 4 or 5, we could see those temperatures only in the upper 50s. Borrego Springs starts out with a high temperature earlier in the day at 72 degrees. In Oceanside, 65 degrees. But then for Thursday night into Friday, we've got this disturbance dropping through. It's going to bring some snow here to some of the mountains in the Four Corners. We could see a shower or two out of it in a few locations. Along the coast for your Thursday, 64 degrees, partly sunny. Friday, 66 with lots of sunshine and mostly sunny and 64 on Saturday. Wednesday in inland areas where it's 65 degrees, not as warm. Partly sunny and cool on Thursday with a high of only 60, much of the day in the 50s. Friday, sunny skies and 67 degrees. In the mountain areas, mostly sunny and cooler for Wednesday with a temperature of 50. Thursday, we're cooler, 43 degrees. There could be a shower around in spots for later in the day or into Thursday night. We could see a couple of spotty showers, sunny and chilly on Friday. And in the desert areas, there could be an afternoon shower around on Thursday, a high temperature of 65, maybe a couple of showers in spots Thursday night. Friday, we've got plenty of sunshine with a temperature of 67. Saturday, 66 degrees and mostly sunny on Sunday, and 65. I'm Regina Miller, KPBS News.
If you've been wondering what tops the list of best jobs for 2020, U.S. News and World Report says that honor goes to software developer, which has actually been on the top of their list for 3 years in a row. But before you pack your kids off to coding camp, there are other jobs to consider as well. The rest of the top 5 best jobs are in healthcare, like dentist, physician's assistant, orthodontist, and nurse practitioner. The best paying job, well, that honor goes to anesthesiologist, followed by surgeon. This year's Consumer Electronics Show is officially underway in Las Vegas. The annual showcase is evolving beyond gadgets. Impossible Foods earned several awards at last year's CES, and it's back this year. Today, the company introduced its plant-based solution for pork and sausage. Impossible and Beyond Meat have become major players in the industry, with products picked up by supermarkets, restaurants, and food brands. It's been 2 years since California legalized recreational marijuana, but KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani says law enforcement is still figuring out how to police people who drive high.
I want you to close your eyes. Once you close your eyes, I want you to think 30 seconds in your head. Once you think 30 seconds pass, open your eyes and let me know. Do you understand the test?
Yes.
Officer Adolfo Muriel demonstrates what he would do if he pulled over a driver under the influence of a drug like marijuana.
Drugs will make the eyelids flutter, so I'm going to take note of that. Of the person, how it starts to sway.
Muriel is a California Highway Patrol officer and a drug recognition expert, or DRE for short.
Drug recognition experts have additional training in detecting and determining whether or not a person is under the influence or a specific category of drugs. Us DREs, we use a drug matrix. And on the drug matrix on the back of our cards, it has all the categories of drugs and the effects that they have. So when I do an evaluation, I'm looking for those effects. I'm looking for those signs and symptoms.
Muriel says in the 2 years since the sale of recreational marijuana became legal, he's seen a rise in vehicle crashes.
Now that people that smoke marijuana, they tend to smoke marijuana before they go to bed and then immediately after they wake up. The problem is that they smoke marijuana when they wake up and then they go to work. And now we're seeing crashes, DUI crashes, in the mornings. After before we didn't have that.
Marijuana is hard to police. THC, the compound in marijuana that gets you high, affects everyone differently. So traditional tools used on drunk drivers, like breathalyzers, don't work. And California doesn't have a legal limit for drugged driving, like with alcohol. So it's up to Muriel and other DREs to decide whether someone is under the influence. Muriel says California has about 1,400 DREs. That's the most in the nation. But he thinks the state needs a lot more. That's because cannabis consumption keeps going up. In West Hollywood, the Original Cannabis Cafe opened in October. It's the first eatery in the nation where customers can consume marijuana products with their meals. Ricardo Baca is a renowned independent marijuana journalist.
There is open consumption happening all around us. There's a concentrates menu, flower menu. It just says that we're finally entering an era of normalization.
Baca says marijuana has become a mainstream drug, much like alcohol, and it's still unclear how to regulate it. But, he says, relying on drug recognition experts' opinions instead of a scientific tool is problematic.
They're using the roadside sobriety tests that we're familiar from black and white movies. It's like, touch your nose, and that's how they're telling, are you high or are you not? So there's no scientific objective, and that's problematic.
That's why the UC San Diego Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research is trying to address the problem.
Make a left at the next intersection.
A driver, in this case me, hits the gas and drives down a busy road. At first, it's an easy trip. But soon, I feel like I'm trying to be careful right now. Thomas Marcotte is the co-director of the Cannabis Research Center. He uses this driving simulation machine to research how people behave when they're stoned.
It's a completely interactive simulator with gas and brake pedal, steering wheel, crashes, auditory sounds, etc. And then they'll do about a 25-minute drive, and that drive is designed to try to mimic as best we can things you might encounter in the real world.
These types of studies have been happening for a while, but Marcotte says they have their limitations. For example, people often use different amounts of pot.
But sometimes they look at just a couple of the field sobriety tests. They may look at low doses. They don't always look at people who are regular users. So one of the things that our study looks to do is to say if we take people who are regular users, the people most likely to go on the road. We want to see, well, what would that look like on the road?
The study also tests other tools that might tell if someone is too high, like a memory test on an iPad. Marcotte says we've long studied how people behave when they're drunk, but not so much when they're high.
The impression is, in most research, is that with cannabis, people tend to go the other direction, tend to become more cautious, tend to drive slower. So it's a very different kind of behavior you might see on the road. That's not true for everyone. So how do you go about identifying those changes?
Marcotte says close to 200 regular pot smokers have gone through his driving simulation. He's excited to see what the data show, but he says the study will not be a catch-all solution for law enforcement.
We haven't looked at edibles, so dabbing. This is where someone gets a highly concentrated form of THC and heats it up very quickly and gets a big dose of THC all at once. We can't do that kind of research because those materials aren't available from the federal government. So there are a lot of questions when it comes to public health and safety that researchers right now just are not able to openly address.
Law enforcement won't be able to use any new technologies from this research until they're approved by the state, which can take time. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
That story is one in a 5-part series called High Hopes, California's Pot Experiment. You can find them anytime on our website. And here's a recap of tonight's top stories. An escalation tonight of the tensions between the U.S. and Iran. We're following Pentagon reports that Iran fired as many as a dozen ballistic missiles at 2 Iraqi air bases that house U.S. troops. This follows America's killing of a top Iranian general last week. The White House says President Trump is meeting with his top national security aides at this very moment and that he could make a prime-time address to the nation. Vice President Pence has briefed congressional leaders. We will continue to update this story on our website, kpbs.org. And Congressman Duncan Hunter will resign next week. The East County Republican gave his formal notice today. He will step down January 13th. Last month, Hunter pleaded guilty in a corruption case related to misusing campaign money. He will be sentenced in March. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a good night.